Hello, and welcome to the fourth installment of the Heritage of America Band Morale Sessions 2021. My name is Senior Airman Dan Dyer, and I am looking forward to being your host this afternoon. Thank you all for stopping by, and I hope you enjoy this session. Today I'd like to talk about why you should consider building your own $100 computer case. I think it's obvious why computers need cases, especially if you're one of those unfortunate souls like me who has spilled something liquid on his case during a gaming match online. Needless to say, it was fun to watch and expensive to replace. The reason it's such a good idea to build your own case is because a lot of the parts out there are not very expensive. Many of your local hardware stores will carry exactly what you need if you're willing to spend a few minutes looking for it. One of the best scratch materials I was able to source online was 1/8 inch aluminum stock. Now that's an 1/8 inch of metal. It may not sound like much, but that's pretty thick. Fully loaded, this case weighs about 15.4 pounds. I checked, it's heavy. The best thing about using metal that thick, however, is that it allows you to tap your own holes, which means that you will not need to use washers, lock washers, nuts, anything else like that. You just put about 16 screws in the case and it puts itself together. Anything thinner than that, especially with an extraordinarily soft metal like aluminum, and you run the risk of either A, stripping out the hole entirely, or B, worse, you get your case all together and then it starts to fall apart on you. Not fun. The first step in building a case and ordering parts for your case is to figure out exactly what you're going to put in your case. That's going to depend on your personal needs and what the computer is actually for. After you figure out what parts you need, you're going to have to figure out exactly how to plug them together. We're going to talk about a lot of those things next week when I lead a session on how to build your own high-powered budget computer. And if you'll notice, I got one end of the long piece of aluminum propped up. That is to ensure that I have a straight cut. If you don't prop it up, it's going to flop around, and guess what? That saw blade's going to cut at a bunch of different angles, and you're going to end up with parts that will not fit together. If you have designed a case that is a simple box case, such as this one, you will end up with a lot of parts that look like this. If you don't end up with a lot of parts that look like this, check your measurements and make sure you're doing those 45-degree angles right. So here are all my parts laid out on the nice picnic table that came with our new house. I'm going to put these all together and make sure I can rest them against each other and that they fit before I get too happy and move on with the next steps. Well, look at that. They fit together perfectly, and it looks like the height of this is just under 3.5 inches, so it will fit squarely into a 2-unit rack. And it should do so without really bumping into anything else. So after you know 110% or whatever that you know exactly where your motherboard's going to go, place it exactly where it's going to go on top of the bottom plate and use a magic marker to mark out exactly where the drill holes are going to go. Make sure you measure. Well, they say measure twice, cut once. I might check my measurements a few more times than that. So now you'd want to take a drill and you want to put holes exactly where you put the marks. Next comes the fun part. We're going to take a threading tool. Some places call it a tap, some places call it a tap and die. If you go to your local hardware store, they'll know what you're talking about and they'll hook you right up. We're going to take this and we're going to cut our own threads. This is going to eliminate the need for nuts and washers and all those painful things that can fall apart on the inside of a computer and cause a short circuit. So we're going to eliminate those, and we're just going to be able to bolt straight into the motherboard. It's also going to save a lot of space. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little grinding tool and we're going to go back and remount the front and back of all these holes. That will ensure that, number one, we have no burrs getting away of the bolts, and number two, is the one that most people won't think about, we have no burrs that are going to make contact with the motherboard and short all our new expensive purchases out. After you're done reaming out all those holes, you can begin to put the nuts and washers onto your motherboard and secure it into place. At this moment, I'd like to put a disclaimer out there and say that no motherboards were damaged in the making of this computer. This is an old motherboard I bought that arrived dead in the mail, but I really didn't care that much because the way this build worked, I was able to get some very heavily used motherboards for about $13 a piece on the internet.
I like what I've got. I want a photographic wagon. Take it underground. Be an eccentric. I wanna get caught. Back when I was learning. Back when I knew I couldn't keep it. And maybe I was wrong and knew it all along. I should have wrote a song for you.
After you've mounted the motherboard, you repeat the process with the sidewalls. Make sure you get a couple clamps on those because this metal is slippery and it tends to move around. What you'll see me doing here is what's called countersinking. I'm going to drill a separate larger hole with a bit that's just the size of the head of the bolt I'm going to put in there. This will ensure that the bolt can be flush with the outside of the case and not take up any extra space, nor will it snag any other components that happen to be mounted next to the computer in the rack system, thereby damaging them as well. Once you are done with that step, you can go ahead and do the other walls in the same fashion.
I need a break, a reason for a camera, a saltwater vein, and a sunburn, healing the walls. You know there's gonna be a movie. First it was you, now it's my turn. And maybe I was wrong and knew it all along.
So once you have the basic box built, it's time to cut holes for the things that are going to go in it. What you want to do is to figure out exactly where the center of your case is. Then you can see how wide the face of your case is and mount your rack ears accordingly if you so choose to mount this in a case.
Take it underground, be an eccentric. I wanna get caught back when I was learning, back when I knew I couldn't keep it. And maybe I was wrong and knew it all along. I should have wrote a song for you.
After you've put one bolt in each of the rack ears, mount it flat on the floor. You might need to use a hammer to encourage it to lie completely flat. It's important that you get this on a flat surface because if the ears aren't completely flat when you bolt them in, it will not fit into a rack unit. Well, it'll fit. It's just going to be really difficult. So I had mentioned earlier that the advantage of building a case in this particular fashion was you could just pull out a couple of screws and work on each faceplate by itself. So this one here happens to be the rear faceplate. We're going to start putting holes in stuff that needs to poke through the computer. This here, since it's the back, it has an in-out hole. This is going to be where the I/O bracket goes for all of the USB, the internet, all that sort of thing. The big hole next to it is for the PSU, or the power supply unit. This one happens to have a very large one, and it's large because it has a large fan, and that enables it to run in low speed mode and not make a lot of noise. And the other hole I'm making here, the small hole, you'll notice I'm putting a bracket there. This is so I can mount the GPU, or graphics processing unit, or graphics card directly to the back of the computer. This will ensure that the graphics card stays in place. It will ensure that it won't touch any other part of the computer, and it will also feel really solid when I plug in and unplug the DVI cable from the back of the unit.
First it was you, now it's my turn. And maybe I was wrong, and knew it all along. I should have written a song for you. I like what I've got. I want a photographic wagon. Take it underground. Be an eccentric. I wanna get caught. Back when I was learning. Back when I knew I couldn't keep it.
So after you have all of your holes drilled, it's time to take everything, put it all together, and start the unit up. This is a good point in the build to decide where you're going to permanently mount all your fans and other cooling devices. I was originally going to have mine go side to side, but having a fan inside a case, inside another case, is not the best way to get clean air into your computer. So I went with the original design, the way the computer came, and the fan is taking air in from the front where the clean air is, and it's shooting it out the back. So here is a view of the front of my computer case mounted in my case rack, and here is a view of the back of it with all of the cables, clearly demonstrating why it needs to be mounted in a rack, because oh my gosh, look at that nest of cables. The best thing this does is that this rack is on caster wheels, which allows me to pick an instrument, roll it up to the instrument, plug the mics in, and hit record. I can be ready to hit a chart within about 15 minutes. All I've got to do is roll the card over. So folks, I hope you have enjoyed this morale session, and I hope I have inspired you to go out there and try some things on your own. I will stick around for the remainder of the session. I don't know if we have a half hour or an hour. If it's only a half hour, I'm pretty sure I've used that up, but I will stick around and listen to any questions that you guys have. As a matter of fact, I would appreciate some questions. I would appreciate some input. I've got a couple more of these videos to do, and I would love to find ways to make them more entertaining.